Today we'll be talking about SciDB. It's an open source parallel distributed array database. We'll describe what each of those terms means over the course of this webinar. We think it's very well suited to a lot of problems in bioinformatics. It has its own query language, an array SQL-like language, but it's also queryable and programmable from R, Python, and lots of other languages, and we'll tell you a bit more about that too. So we'll begin with a striking quote that we just heard from a pharmaceutical client of ours. And this happened to be a fellow that was complaining, a scientist at a pharma client that was complaining about SQL and wanted to do his work with matrices. And many, many problems indeed are well suited to linear algebra problems. SQL, of course, also is vitally important in many applications, but we thought this was a particularly cute quote for us, and so we throw that up there for you. We just heard that. Paradigm4 is a company that develops SciDB, which is an open source software application. And we also have some enterprise extensions, and the mission of our company is to expand the use of SciDB in lots of different enterprise applications. The company itself was co-founded by Marilyn, who you just heard, and Mike Stonebreaker, who's a pretty famous database researcher and a professor at MIT. Mike was involved with the development of Vertica, Volt, Postgres, and lots of other database innovations over the years, and he's actively involved in the development of SciDB. A project that has been running on SciDB for quite a while that I'm sure many of you have heard of or perhaps even used is the NIH and National Library of Medicine's 1000 Genome Project browser, which has a really beautiful web interface developed by the NCBI. And all of those options on the web interface for selecting chromosomes and portions of genomic sequences and doing simple statistics, those actually in real time trigger SciDB queries, and the results are displayed to you graphically in the web interface. It's a really beautiful application of SciDB, presently running approximately 20 terabytes or so. Is that right? And I think their data set is going to grow to many hundreds of terabytes in the near future. So it's a really nice large-scale SciDB application. In addition to the 1000 Genomes browser project, there are lots of uses of SciDB kind of at national laboratories and in big science applications out there. We have a number of different users at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab doing all kinds of interesting problems, including climate simulation, storage of vast repositories of kind of medical imaging applications, including MRIs. Those, as you guys know, who work at all with medical imaging applications, those data sources really start to get very large very quickly. And it's nice to have a way to quickly organize and sort those and deal with those things very expediently. They're also doing metagenomic applications at LPNL. NASA Goddard uses SciDB to manage a completely different type of imaging application, like with satellite image data and remote sensing measurements of the Earth from satellite data, telemetry data. And there's an Institute for Bioinformatics that also is doing kind of different types of remote Earth sensing applications with SciDB. And there are many, many other large-scale science applications involving SciDB that we're not listing here. And as I mentioned when we began, our company's mission is to extend the use of SciDB and support it in industry. And we do quite a bit of that, especially here in the Boston area where we're headquartered, but globally as well. We have a lot of really interesting and serious applications in pharmaceuticals and biotech more broadly. There are also some pretty cool applications in e-commerce, things like recommendation engines on really large-scale amounts of data. And we'll show you some of the analytics capabilities that are built into SciDB that can support some of these interesting application areas. And as you can imagine, these quantitative finance applications, especially ones that deal with large volumes of kind of high-frequency data, that data piles up after a while, and those guys are always interested, I should say guys and gals, are always interested in kind of cutting-edge applications, so they're using SciDB in some applications there. And as you could guess from the big science applications, there's a lot of interest commercially in using SciDB to manage general image data processing applications and sensor analytics, kind of Internet of Things application areas. With that background, let's talk a little bit about how SciDB structures data in a very general way. And then I'll turn things over to Alex in a moment to talk about some very specific application areas that we hope you guys will find pretty interesting. So I said at the very beginning that SciDB organizes data in arrays, which is very different than almost every other database out there. It's very different from a relational database model, and it's extremely different from these NoSQL models that everybody's using these days, which tend to be kind of key value stores.